Hello folks, it's Thursday. Happy Thursday. I'm Esther Emery, and many of you know me from the DIY channel Fouch-O-Matic Off-Grid. But right now you're on my personal channel, and on Thursdays what I do is tell a story, or tell things that I think or believe, or all of it together. So I invite you to sit down and enjoy, maybe have a chore to do, or a warm cup of tea or something. I'm going to tell you how I became a radical homemaker and also what that is. So I have to begin with a confession. I probably wouldn't use the term homesteader to describe myself if I hadn't found community around that. The dream of having a homestead or being a homesteader, those words didn't necessarily touch something in me in particular, but I share some values with some other folks, especially appreciation of traditional skills, the idea of appreciating a simple life or a less materialistic oriented life, and also appreciation of self-sufficiency and just a skilled life, an ability to do for yourself and take care of yourself and contribute, as well as being connected to and having wisdom about the natural world. So I love being in community with these people, all of us who call ourselves homesteaders, and certainly my actual life path of having 3 acres out in the woods in Idaho certainly makes sense to use that word. But what I set out to be when I decided I wanted to change who I was in the world was something more like a radical homemaker. Now, I haven't always wanted to be a radical homemaker. If you take my story back a little bit further, I wanted quite the opposite. One thing about me is that when I was 15 years old, I was already essentially emancipated, meaning without parental supervision, and I was also in college. And that was a challenging and extremely defining time. Those teenage years, I was quite vulnerable, and I felt my femininity and my youth very keenly because of situations that I was in where I was unique in that way. I used what skills I had to survive and thrive. I had my intelligence, I had my ambition, I had my willingness to succeed, and all of that set me on a career path, and a career path on a fast track. I associated all of my skills and excellence with a career world, with making money, with being a somebody out in the world. And nothing about that gave me any interest in homemaking or traditional skills or anything domestic. So how did I get from being this person who was not just uninterested in, but in fact a bit repelled by homemaking and things of the home, into someone who now teaches homemaking and homesteading skills as a passion and a vocation, and really believes that these are healing and life-giving skills? How did I make this big switch from here to here? Well, the simple answer is that I had a baby. I think a lot of people, not that everyone has childbirth in their path at all, but for those who do have a baby, I think that a lot of us kind of reach back to a prior generation looking for something that we can carry forward, looking for this line that we can draw out, because you need some guidance when you have a child that you are responsible for, and it can be stunning, their utter vulnerability and dependency. I think some of us who never dreamed we would reach back to what our parents and grandparents did, right at that moment we find ourselves doing exactly that. Well, I had a troubled relationship with my mother, and I had a lot of internal difficulty with drawing that connection. But then here I was with this baby, and wanting to find some way to reconnect back to my own history. Another thing about that baby is that he was a redhead. When my first baby was born, Milo, he had just a dusting of red hair, Well, my mother had been a redhead too, and her redhead identity was really important to her. It made her feisty, and it made her powerful, and it made her unique. Those are all things which, of course, contributed to some of the challenges that I had being her daughter. But it was something that I identified as uniquely of my mother, and here it was in my child. So I'm trying to draw this line back from who my mother was to who my child is, and trying to make this pathway that I can walk to be able to step forward into the unknown of parenting, right? And I find myself facing down a huge obstacle in my own heart, which is that I don't respect homemaking. Inside, I didn't respect homemaking. I think of myself as someone who is skilled, someone who is intelligent, someone who is capable of leadership. And both because of my internal messages and also stuff I'm getting from the world, I think if I take those skills and I turn them towards my own home, I'm wasting them. That's not the right thing to do. That's not the best thing to do. I shouldn't use all of this intelligence and all this capability to knit and learn food preservation. I should be using all these skills to do something that makes money, and something that spends money, and something that makes some kind of a mark in a consumer-driven world. Well, this is a problem. This is a conflict. This was a period of turmoil for me, and I sorted through things, and I did a lot of personal thinking and examination. But many of the conclusions that I came to are synonymous with a book that I found a bit later by an author by the name of Shannon Hayes, and it's called Radical Homemakers, and I'll show you the cover right now. And Shannon Hayes has gone through some of the same things that I went through. A rural person who felt very driven to succeed, went out and wanted to have a career, and then found herself choosing to be a homemaker and wanting to sort through those things, sort through those oppositions in her life. So here I am, trying to resolve this conflict, trying to understand why it is that I want to be a homemaker when I've never in my life wanted to be a homemaker. Why am I wanting to be responsible for my food, right from the ground all the way into my body and my children's bodies, when I've never in my life wanted that, and have associated things like canning and standing over the stove all day with being a second-class citizen. Well, the end of the story, skipping to the end of the story, love wins. And it really was love and compassion that helped me to redirect and resolve some of this confusion. And let me explain. All my life, I've been concerned about justice issues, and I've been concerned about the health of humans and communities and our entire land. You know, I'm one of these people who thinks about what's happening for other people and what's happening for other creatures, and is concerned for that. Well, you start thinking about where your food comes from. You start thinking about where your clothes come from. Almost anything comes from. This camera that I'm talking to, you start thinking about where these things come from. You don't have to go very far down to find hardship for other humans, for animals, for soils and ecosystems, water systems. You find wrong things. And so I felt this boiling up in me, this love, this compassion that wants to reverse those wrong things, that really wants things to be more right. But the only way for me to correct my influence in any of those patterns is to be able to undo the feeding tube, the umbilical cord by which I receive all of the things that I need through systems that I have very little control over. If I wanted to express my love and compassion for other human beings and for all the interconnected elements of creation, I was going to have to cut that cord. I was going to have to unhook from that feeding tube. And the only way that I could do it was to regain some control over my existence and how I feed myself and how I shelter myself and how I take care of myself. So it may seem a little odd to have the word radical with the word homemaker, or it might seem like I'm overstretching this concept or being dramatic, but I challenge you to think about what happens when you take up your rolling pin and your garden spade and your measuring cups as if they are tools by which we achieve our freedom, tools by which we disengage from the feeding tube or the umbilical cord, these systems that are connecting us to outcomes that we don't have control over. So how can we then regain control over how we are affecting the world, how our feet fall on the world? Homemaking is the answer. Returning to our kitchens, returning to our homes, returning to our families is the answer. Now, I will tell you the truth. I do not give up my identity as someone who stands for and protects women. I don't want a world where women aren't known and seen and valued and safe. I don't want a world where women can't tell their own stories with their own voices and be heard. But I will not accept the falsehood that homemaking or domestic arts are somehow the clamp that holds women down. So that's the story of how I became a radical homemaker. It's not a phrase that I use often anymore, at least not in public ways, but I keep it in my heart, the idea that I am a homemaker for a cause. I'm a homemaker for a reason. I'm a homemaker in ways that regenerate power rather than extracting it. A homemaker in ways that give me my freedom rather than take it away. I'm Esther Emery. Thanks for watching today. I'll see you next week.